From Guantanamo Bay to Christmas Island to prisons and detention centres everywhere. Every Monday at 4 p.m. on your community radio 3CR.
We are still fired up and we're still talking about revolution.
Hello and welcome to the Doin' Time Show. This is 3CR Community Radio, 855 AM on the dial, streaming live on www.3cr.org.au. This is Marisa and I'll be taking you through until 5 o'clock this evening. We've got two very, very important interviews today. And first up, we'll be speaking with Liz Walsh from the Refugee Action Collective. And we're going to be speaking about a refugee rights protest at Bill Shorten's office, which happened on Monday, June the 4th at 12 p.m, 12 Hall Street, Moonee Ponds. And Liz and I are going to be having a very, very pertinent discussion about refugees and asylum seekers and the fact that the Labor has not given us too much support around that. And we're going to clear up a few issues and talk about that. And just to get a little bit of a quote from the media release. After 5 years of hell, after 11 deaths in the offshore camps, enough is enough. The thousands of men, women and children detained on Manus and Nauru must be evacuated immediately and brought to Australia. The camps must be closed. The boats must also be welcomed. And that was a quote from Liz Walsh on that media release. And the Refugee Action Collective has done some excellent work, and we've interviewed quite a few people from there. So pretty soon I'll be welcoming Liz. Then after that, we'll be speaking about the lived experience of prison. And we're going to be speaking with Mark Johnson MBE. And he's got a history of crime, homelessness and drug abuse. And he's become a leading figure in the criminal justice reform movement in the UK and internationally. Mark is actually from the UK. And his organisation, Use a Voice, is led by ex-offenders and works to transform the criminal justice system. And I'll talk more about that later, and give a proper intro after the interview of Liz. So, and that leading up to that, we'll be speaking about an event or a couple of events that Mark will be speaking at. One of the events is in Victoria, Geelong Corporate Centre, Deakin University Waterfront Campus. And I'll give you all those details later and talk about the fact that he's also in partnership with a project at Deakin Uni. And Claire Seppings will also be joining us. She was our Radiothon mascot and listener from last Monday. It's approximately 4:02 and I wanted to give Liz a very warm welcome. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Marisa.
It's lovely to have you. Now, Liz, I'm just wondering if you could just give us a little bit of a report back from the protest and why you had it. Just go for it. Just give us a bit of a background.
Well, yeah, so the Refugee Action Collective decided to target Bill Shorten's office in Moonee Ponds, and this was in response to Shorten's recent comments in the press that a future Labor government, will stop the boats. And, of course, those words were chosen very carefully. He chose to echo Tony Abbott for a reason. He wanted to make it clear that a future Labor government will be just as cruel, just as vicious when it comes to treating refugees, especially those who come by boat. And so we thought it was really important that the refugee movement is very clear that while we very much are for seeing the back of the Liberal government, which has only brought misery and death for asylum seekers in offshore detention and elsewhere, but that we have no illusions in the future Labor government that they're not going to bring relief and they're not going to save the refugees. We're actually going to have to build an independent movement that fights both Labor and Liberal parties. So that was the message we were really trying to send with our action out the front of Shorten's office.
The reason why the Doin' Time Show invited you here, Liz, is just to clear up a few things, because it seems a bit inconsistent here, doesn't it? Because, you know, Bill Shorten did mention that he wants to end indefinite detention. Mm-hmm. But how can indefinite detention be ended? if he's saying that, I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Like, did he actually say that the boats had to be turned back?
That's right. That is actually official Labor Party policy. In 2015, at the ALP National Conference, the party adopted boat turnbacks. There was opposition from the Left Caucus, but they refused to bind their members, which meant that a section of the left, which included what is now the industrial left, so the MUA, the RTBU, the CFMU, all voted to support the boat turnback policy. So they had the numbers at the 2015 conference to oppose that, but they refused to do that because they didn't want to show disunity in front of Bill Shorten and to show all their support for Shorten's leadership. So the boat turnbacks is actually Labor Party policy. In terms of, though, this message of boat turnbacks wasn't just important in terms of future asylum seekers attempting to get to Australia by boat. It was a message about the general approach of Labor Party policy to offshore detention. And so while Bill Shorten and others can say things like they're concerned about the treatment of refugees in offshore detention, that getting refugees off Manus and Nauru is important, they are refusing, Bill Shorten is refusing to put any time limit on how long people will be detained on Manus and Nauru. And not only that, he's also maintaining the position that no asylum seeker will ever be brought to Australia if they have attempted to come to Australia by boat. This is a policy that Kevin Rudd introduced with the PNG deal in 2013, and that remains Labor Party policy, which means there is no way for refugees to be evacuated from Manus and Nauru and brought to safety unless they're brought to Australia. There's no third country settlement on offer that has any solution for the thousands still that remain in offshore hell. So very much. If they've refused to support the key demand of the refugee movement, which is to bring them here, then they're going to continue indefinite detention.
And turning back the boats is actually against international law?
That's right, yes, very much so. And by Australia establishing boat turnbacks, it's helped to pave the way for other countries to adopt similar cruel policies. So you might have been following in the international news that Italy and Malta were refusing to allow a boat to dock at either of their ports, and Spain has recently accepted that boat, which is carrying hundreds of asylum seekers. But also a similar standoff happened with the Rohingya a few years ago, when there was the height of the mass ethnic cleansing happening. That again, Australia's lead in saying that asylum seeker boats will not be brought to the mainland was adopted by a number of other countries in this region. So yes, it's Australia's a leading human rights abuser and is helping to drag down standards internationally.
In my research of this topic, and please correct me here if I'm wrong, and I wanted to discuss this with you, Liz, It says in the policy, a quote here from Bill Shorten, saying that boats will only be turned back if they're safe. Now, how can a boat be safe? Like, what does that actually mean?
Well, they're saying that a boat won't be turned back if it's taking in water, I guess. So they'll assess whether it's seaworthy, and given that there's so little information about what is happening on sea with the Navy turning boats back, I wouldn't trust the Australian government to make any assessment that actually put asylum seeker lives first. So that's the idea, is that vessels that are in trouble won't be turned back, but that the Navy will take the people who are on board. Those people won't be brought to the Australian mainland. They'd probably be brought to Christmas Island and then potentially deported to Manus or Nauru. But of course there are hundreds that are still languishing also on Christmas Island, which is considered a part of Australia.
I mean, it's interesting because I don't believe that any boat can be safe.
Mm-hmm.
Really, how it can't be. It's not possible. I mean,
these boats are, usually very primitive. They're sort of fishermen boats. But really, though, what makes the trip more unsafe in terms of the boat travel from Indonesia to Australia are the actions actually of the Australian government itself. So the fact that they have criminalised what they call people smuggling, which, in other situations people have talked about people who help smuggle people to safety as being heroes, like Oskar Schindler, for instance. But the fact that it's criminalised means that those who operate in Indonesia use their least seaworthy vessels, because the vessels will be captured and destroyed. They also need to take routes that are not as safe to try and evade detection from the Navy. They put crew on that are young, who have less experience, because those fishermen, those Indonesian fishermen, will be arrested and detained by the Australian government and charged with people smuggling. So all of these things create unsafe situations. So we have to also look at, when they say we have to stop the boats to save lives, well, clearly the Australian government does not give a damn about refugee people's lives, because we've just seen a number of people die in detention over the last few weeks. But also the deaths at sea are escalated by the fact that safety of lives at sea, which should be paramount when it comes to maritime policy, is not at all implemented by the Australian government.
And refugees indeed need to be able to exercise the basic right to seek asylum by boat, as I said, a right recognised by international law. But historically, I don't think the Labor government was turning back the boats.
No, it used to be that boat turnbacks was a policy of the hard right, and I believe it was actually Pauline Hanson who first raised the slogan, boat turnbacks. Yeah, so we could get a bit of a flavour for what the policy then is about. So then it was adopted by Tony Abbott, and then now has been adopted by the Labor Party. So, yeah, boat turnbacks hasn't historically been Australian Labor Party policy, though it is important to recognise that Australian Labor Party policy has, for many decades, been anti-refugee. It's not just a new phenomenon with Bill Shorten. In 1992, it was the Labor Party that introduced mandatory detention in the first place. That was a new policy. It hadn't been that people were mandatorily detained when they sought asylum in Australia previously. Instead, they were held in reception centres. What's now Maribyrnong Detention Centre, a maximum sort of security, almost detention facility, had been a welcoming reception centre with refugees able to come and go, to access various English language lessons, to have some control over the food that they were being served. It was by no means perfect, and there were often protests by migrants about conditions, but very much detention itself hasn't always been Australian policy either, and I think people forget that. They lose their imagination and think that the only way to treat asylum seekers is to forcibly detain them behind razor wire.
It's crazy, and we really do need to push for change in regards to that. But indeed, putting aside Labor just for a second, this has become, we're in a global crisis. We really are. This is a world issue, isn't it? And
that's right.
You've got some countries opening their borders. There are too many refugees, homeless people on the streets. And really, the whole world needs to work together to try and help each other, isn't it, to overcome this global crisis?
Yeah, you're totally right, Marisa. It is a global issue, and I think it's important that we realise that refugees are products of crisis often created by Western powers. So many people are fleeing from war zones and from dictatorships that are backed by the West, or wars that have been fostered or driven by Western powers, like Iraq and Afghanistan. Or the Tamils who fled from the Sri Lankan regime and the racist regime there that the Australian government has supported over the many years. So very much we have to sort of look beyond just the treatment of refugees in Australia and have a look at the responsibility that Australia, the US and others have in creating refugees in the first place. But yeah, I think that we're seeing also governments around the world, unfortunately, the trend is not towards welcoming refugees, but throwing up the borders and creating detention prisons. And I think governments use scapegoating of refugees and migrants as a way to distract people from the broader agenda that governments, whether they're conservative or social democratic, have when it comes to their own population of austerity, cutting funding for health and education, and this increasing authoritarian turn and anti-worker, anti-poor turn means that, racism is a tool for all governments. And so when we resist and try and fight for refugee rights, we also need to take up those issues too and say that there's an alternative on all of these questions.
Absolutely. And in fact, there's really a lack of consultation in terms of the lived experience of asylum seekers and refugees, the lived experience of Aboriginal people and the lived experience of prisoners.
That's right.
Liz, it's been great having you. I wish we could talk about it some more, but I'm sure you'll be coming back for future updates.
Can I let you know about a few
events coming up? Of course. I was about to ask you if you had any final comments.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
This Friday we're having it's World Refugee Week this week, and on Friday there's a vigil because a refugee recently committed suicide on Nauru, murdered by the policies of offshore detention, an Iranian man who's 26 years old. And so there will be a vigil to protest about the fact that people's lives are still being destroyed by our government, and that starts at 5:30 at the National Gallery of Victoria. There will be speeches, music, and projections. And then on July 21st, there's a major rally that RAC is organising, 2 p.m. At the State Library on July 21st, and that's to say 5 years is enough, end offshore detention, and bring the refugees here.
That's great. Well, let's just hope that, because a lot of Labor MPs oppose the turning back the boats policy. Let's hope that, some change can happen there.
Well, definitely what we do on the streets is all part of trying to put the heat on all Labor MPs to abandon Labor's appalling policy.
And whilst voting, absolutely, and whilst voting can be a tool for change, what we need to remember as well is, and I was talking off air to some people about this, is that it's all very well to have political parties, but at the end of the day, all parties are governed by the multinationals and the boardrooms, aren't they?
That's right. It's the top end of town corporations that really dominate when it comes to policies, and the only way that our voices are going to be heard is through collective action. Well,
let's send out a shout out to Bill Shorten on this radio show. To walk his talk. He's good. He talks about, helping the hospitals and helping the poor, isn't it, Liz? And people that are most vulnerable. Let's look at him eradicating that turning back the boats policy, because whether he meant it or not, it's pretty inconsistent.
Yes, we definitely want to see Labor break from the bipartisan cruelty.
Thank you so much for coming onto the program. And just for listeners' benefit, we're going to be going into an announcement and then a song. I will then give an intro for our next interview, and then we'll speak with Mark and also to a bit to Claire as well. Good on you, Liz.
Great.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
Bye bye.
What was it that inspired you to study the ethics of freedom of expression and communication?
Look, it was really the Piss Christ exhibition when it was in Australia in 1997. I was really shocked, actually, that Sarana had immersed something in urine, and I thought that my own reaction was quite astonishing, partly because I am an atheist, so why am I being shocked about...
And you're back with the Doing Time back with the Doing Time show, and that was a song by Bob Marley, and I'll read out the name of the song later. But it really is quite an appropriate song given what we were talking about and what we are about to talk about. So in case listeners have just tuned in, this is the Doing Time show, and it's approximately 4:22. 3cr.org.au, streaming live, 8:55 a.m. on the dial. And you just heard an interview recently with Liz Walsh from the Refugee Action Collective, giving a report back on a protest about Bill Shorten's recent policy to turn back the boats. And coming up soon is Mark Johnson, MBE, member of the British Empire. And we're going to be speaking to him shortly, and I'm hoping not to say too much. I'm going to just stay in the background, and I'm going to try and have him talk as much as possible. He's an international guest from the UK. But I'll just quickly read out this introduction. Mark is the founder and CEO of User Voice. Mark's organisation, User Voice, is led by ex-offenders and works to transform the criminal justice system. Mark is an ex-offender and former drug abuser. After primary, secondary and tertiary rehab, he started a tree surgery business. His policy was to employ other recovering addicts and ex-offenders. He won, among other accolades, a Pride of Britain Award for his work. His best-selling autobiography, Wasted, was published in 2007. What a cool title. Mark went on to become a policy advisor to the Prince's Trust, then the government and the third sector. He founded the charity User Voice to offer policymakers access to the unheard and marginalised voices in society. More recently, he founded Can Do Coffee while offering socially excluded and meaningful employment opportunities. Mark is a Ashoka Fellow and visiting associate at the University of Durham. He was awarded an MBE in 2015 for services to vulnerable people. He is a renowned social commentator and public speaker. Mark has come to Australia for 2 weeks to be a keynote speaker at the Reintegration Puzzle Conference in Hobart. And in his presentation, he will describe his personal journey from addiction to award-winning social enterprise to discussing the value of lived experience and listening to the user voice. And he will outline the sorry state of involving people from tokenism to sharing power and the barriers to involvement. Excuse my pronunciation with certain things. I have a Braille computer that's absolutely hopeless, and the dots are really bad. It's worse than hundreds and thousands on bread. You'd appreciate that, Mark, coming from the UK. Braille is a bit like hundreds and thousands, actually. But Look, in the studio today joining us, I wanted to give an intro, and I gave an intro out of constructive rebellion. I'm a rebel with a cause, not without a cause. Simply that mainstream media wouldn't have given such an extensive introduction, and it is important to honour the work that you've done, Mark. So welcome to you, Mark, and also Claire as well.
Thanks,
and
Marisa.
Claire is our mascot for the Doing Time show. And also Danny is here, Mark's offsider and assistant. Hi, Danny.
Hi.
Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Pull up a chair. Just in case you need to say anything. Yeah. So just face the mic there. That's great. So, Mark, I'm wondering if we could start off by you just talking about your background. And Claire, I know you met Mark while you were overseas.
Yep.
And in fact, just to quickly, before we look at that, Mark, you met Mark and Use a Voice for your Churchill Fellowship.
That's right.
And we've spoken about that before.
Yes, that's right.
So, Mark, let's talk. How did you get involved with all this?
Well, that was the most amazing introduction I've ever had in my life, I think. Comprehensive. How did I get involved? I'm not too sure. Sometimes I have to pinch myself. Even today, I've been clean for 18 years. And I think those 18 years have been stranger than the ones before it, you know. Some of the things that I've done, had the privilege of, the people I've had the privilege to meet, and the organisations and sort of impact of the work that we've done and stuff. It's been pretty strange over the last 18 years. I think it all come from, and I suppose this is my kind of the point to kind of all of my work today, and that's through the lived experience that I've the experience that I've lived through as a child to a young person to an adult, and to be sort of savaged by drug addiction, etc. To address that and to literally turn it on its head. The problem has now become the solution. And I'm a big advocate for people that have sort of walked through it, that have survived through it, that have thrived through it, to actually go and apply themselves back onto a system which really needs it, let's face it.
So you've lived through drug abuse and addiction, and you're pretty well placed to do that. How did you actually, we have to say that it's a bit of a capitalist racist system out there wherever we live, a bit of a global crisis. So how did you actually work out, convince the politicians or convince organisations to accept this peer mentoring program? Was it hard?
I think when if I use a principle, and it's one of the values of user voice actually, and that's authenticity. And I think that when you've lived through it, you know so much about it, whether that's domestic violence, mental health, like all of the very sort of difficult things to understand. And but when you've lived through it and you've come out the other side, you have an authenticity to what you say, and so it's only about creating or being helped to have an opportunity to face people in power. And once you do face people in power with your authenticity and your lived experience, the room falls silent often, believe it or not, because there's a skills deficit, whether that's amongst professionals. We think we know by going to university and learning from a piece of paper, but obviously we only know what we're told by somebody else's opinion about a social subject. And so a politician, for instance, is, policy is derived not from professionals or professional insight. It's derived through what's popular, and often that's derived from the media, and then the media's derived from sensationalism. And so when you hit them with a thundering bolt of reality, they listen. Yeah, they have to listen.
So you've talked about how user voice was created. Can you talk a little bit about the aims and objectives of user voice and how you get your funding?
Oh,
what is it?
Yeah, my mission in life, I suppose, is to help as many people as I can. And that's not because I've been redeemed and had this evangelical experience of wanting to go and help. It's just the fact of the bloody injustice that's occurred throughout my life. And now that I'm in a position of sort of knowing myself and knowing what power that I do have, I've got this drive to want to go and help others. And then the other one is I know that there's many other people like me out there, through whatever reason, just haven't had the opportunity, encouragement and support. And that's where mentoring and stuff comes in. Is because what is mentoring? It's about developing an honest, trusting relationship by somebody that actually kind of half understands what you're going through, what you've been through. And it just so happens that ex-offenders, people who have been through the justice system, been through childhood abuse in all of its forms, and come out the other end of it, they have this hard-won knowledge which is just impossible to go to university about. And that's why I created User Voice, because it's 95% led and staffed by ex-offenders, and they go and work inside of prisons. The special bit is they now have keys.
Okay. To the cells?
Yeah, the cells, yeah.
Oh.
I actually was opposed to it. Daniel's here, he knows, you mean, but I was...
Sorry. So who's got keys to this backtrack? Who's got keys to the cells?
So we in England, we work now in 30 prisons.
Okay.
And we work in 2/3 of the whole country. That's from the Scottish borders down to...
Now, who's we?
The whole organisation. User Voice, yeah. We've got probably about 50 or 60 full-time staff.
Yes.
Then probably half again in part-time, and then a whole raft of what we call paid associates and volunteers and stuff.
Yeah.
And the people that work in the prisons, there's pretty much 3 key holders to each prison.
Yes.
And that because we're 95% led and lived by ex-offenders, that means they're all got key holders for prisons. And it's never been done before, but it actually works. It works so tremendously well. And I'll tell you what really works.
Tell us about that.
What really works about it is we think that we need to get sort of this complex sort of science behind reducing reoffending and all of this stuff, when often what it's about, as I said to you, is opportunity, encouragement, support. And it's saying, well, if you see somebody that you might have known in the past, or you know somebody that knows because they were notorious offenders, walking around the prison, it turns your whole understanding of where you are, of this sort of this rite of passage which often offenders come from. You know, my uncle's done it, my dad's done it, but then you see somebody who has done it, holding keys, walking around the wings with a new message.
Okay, so
it's an unspoken education. Yeah, it's an unspoken education, and even in your, even if you're still active, you can't help but say, well, if he could do it, I could.
I see.
So it's an introduction of hope that change is possible.
Yeah, and Mark, I hope you don't mind me asking you specific questions about it. I'm just trying to give listeners a bit of it, because here in Australia it's fairly new, isn't it, Claire?
Very.
This type of thing. So we're not used to it. So it's really important that I'm asking you these questions to educate listeners. So can you just give a little... So I'm not interrogating you. Can you just give a little bit of just a day in the life of a worker in Use a Voice? What would they be doing? So they would be going out to the prisons, correct?
Yes.
And what would they be doing? Counselling, or just more walking around the prison? What happens?
Let me just go back a little bit to help you understand a bit more.
Sure.
Because when we set it up, it was through observation of the whole criminal justice system. For me, it doesn't work.
No.
And 99% of people, it doesn't work. People get out of crime or prison, etc., almost by default, or a series of incremental changes, whether it's mum and dad, whether it's the loved one, whether it's a job, whether it's mental health service, whether it's all of these things, and then time and circumstance as well. Age has got to, been to jail one too many times. But, so the lived experience, what I've got has a value, right, but it's not recognised, okay?
Yeah.
So I know how to stop taking drugs, stop committing crime, and how to adjust my mind to the series of risks and mental relapses that I could have, but go on the sort of, let's call it the straight and narrow, okay?
Yep.
So, but that skill set isn't recognised, okay? But it's got a tremendous power working with other people. So firstly, the prison governors, you've got to get into prison. How do you do that? Well, traditionally it was getting charitable funding. I'm looking at Claire. Getting charitable funding, etc., and then saying, right, we want to work in prison. Well, the prison governor, it's a really strange world, prison, because it's all about containment. It's not about rehabilitation as a whole. And I could prove that, there's a lot like that. We could have hours discussion on it, but so it's about containment. So firstly, we have to get the governor to recognise that this has got a value. And so we got them to pay for it. So Use a Voice in the UK is 95%, I'm looking at Daniel, 95% contractual funded.
Good.
And so what that means straight away is the governor's taking it so serious, yeah? So why does he take it serious? Because one part of the lived experience and applying it is about we can reduce violence through negotiation and communication with one another. So he's got a problem with prisoner staff violence or prisoner violence.
Oh, I see.
So there's this world. There's the governor world. There's the senior manager world. There's the wing staff world, and then there's the real world, which is made up of prisoners. And one can't often access the other.
Yeah.
But when you get an ex-offender there, they work without barriers. And one of the biggest barrier across the board is trust.
Absolutely.
So professional to an offender. I don't even like the word, do you know what I mean? But we use it because it's sort of hard to think of
what
anything
can you do? Exactly.
that describes what we're talking about. Because really they're just people, you know what I mean? Who've made mistakes, and that's like human nature. But
yeah.
We get the prison governors to pay for what we do, and they pay for their service improvement. They don't pay for rehabilitation of the individual.
Sure.
But we do it for the rehabilitation of the individual.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So that's how we've got successful really, is because we've gone, right, we've understood the landscape. We've understood that that actually the services that the public think that are there to it's called punish and reform.
Yeah.
They do one part of it quite well. And that's where they don't even punish, really. It's containment.
Okay, so I'm just going to give you a bit of a scenario here, right? Yeah. I'm going to be a typical social worker. No. No. I'm an ex-offender, okay? I've abused drugs. Yeah. What are you going to do for me? Why should I actually be in Use a Voice? What can you do for me?
We're not going to do anything for you. That's the first message that you'd ever hear from
me.
You're
not a do-gooder, mate. You're not a do-gooder?
No. All right. We don't do anything, because that's the paradigm shift, really. From
okay, so what will I do? How can you help me? Or do I have to help myself?
We've got a world. We've got a world, especially vulnerable, sort of what we would class the vulnerable group of society, etc., that have got this learnt helplessness. So
exactly. That's why I asked you the question.
This first message is we won't do anything for you. You're actually going to do it for yourself.
Yep.
And so, this is about creating an enabling environment and exploring power. And even though we're doing it in such an extreme environment where all of our power has been removed, and all of our responsibilities and all of our choices and everything have been removed, there's still some that we've got, and we're going to start to work with that. Yeah,
that's great, Mark. Yeah. I mean, look, you've given a really good overview, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but what you're actually saying is that, obviously people in prison have a choice as to whether or not they want to use a voice. Yeah, and it's all about negotiation and going into the prison to help people help themselves. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. The thing what you've got to understand is, if the problem's mistrust, and it's a learnt mistrust as well, it's the mistrust that comes through social services.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, like the first introduction I had was, the social worker stood round looking at me like a victim. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And then, like, meeting the psychiatrist when I was 8, who then said the answer was sending me to boxing classes because I was so violent. It was ridiculous.
Anger management?
Nobody reached me. Do you know what I mean? And so what they did do is built up layers of mistrust where I would tell you what you needed to know. Yeah. And so firstly, you've got to get through this barrier. And then the second part is providing opportunity for people. And if you provide an opportunity, they often take it with both hands. And
that's fantastic.
What happens though in this sort of colonialist approach to social problem solving is that one group of people can't access the other. So the people like me who are still active would not engage with somebody like Claire as a social worker, for instance. You know what I mean? I just wouldn't do it, because I'd want to get through my centre. But where I would, and which would be absolutely pivotal to my introduction to a relationship with an intervention or something, is somebody else that was like me that I could trust, that said, you know what, like, I've done this and it's okay.
But you trust Claire, though, because otherwise you wouldn't have spoken to her about the research.
It's very, very interesting. What it's about is
I know what you're saying.
The role that lived experience plays, right, is the first spearhead, okay? Because the fundamental problem is distrust.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah? Is that going, okay, I'm going to get involved with you and you're just going to have me over again? Or, the services that you're claiming you're offering the world to the world, i.e. changing lives, you're underqualified to deal with my problems. Yeah. You know what I mean? I don't even know what they are, but I know that what your intervention is like an activity-based intervention where I've got a deeply, almost clinical psychological problem. I need to be fitted with the right help.
So you're basically saying, Mark, that that Use a Voice is involved with, being in the prison, isn't it? Is it being just in the prison, or do you?
No, it's being out. It's being everywhere. Yeah, it's
everywhere.
Inside and out. Yeah.
Good.
It's not, and it's not just about that. Is the amount of reports and piece of research that gets done by people with power.
Good. Yeah.
And mainly they're like academic institutes or senior criminal justice people or named people that want a name for themselves, and I call it dining out on other people's misery. Do you know what I mean? Like. No, but what I'm saying is, like, they go into a community. This is the colonialism, you see. This is where we got it wrong. Is that they go into these communities and write it up on their clipboards and paper, then get a name for it, then try and regurgitate an intervention over a group of people that don't even need it, that could do it for themselves.
Exactly.
Given the opportunity, they could do it for themselves. And also, that information is owned by them. So if I give Claire, for instance, I'm looking at her, if I give Claire, information about myself that's accurate, that's my information, and there needs to be a respect for that.
Of course.
Whereas what's happened is the powerful are dominating the powerless.
That's exactly
all of the time we're just getting further and further away. So, user voices principle. We do research, but we do it in such a way that we have peer researchers, so we pay people that actually go and gather information or whatever, and then those people are actually pushed forward to government, to the select committees or any kind of gatherings, from the great and the good, and they get an opportunity to go and share that for themselves.
That's fantastic, Mark.
Yeah.
Now it's 4:44, and we haven't got much more time, but I wanted to. Can I just let people know, listeners know about the talk in Geelong? Is that all right?
Yeah, sure.
So Mark will be delivering a talk in Geelong, supporting an innovating peer mentoring pilot program in Geelong, which is a partnership between Deakin University and, how do you pronounce this word, Claire? Philanthropy? How do you pronounce it?
Philanthropy.
Built on Claire Seppings' Churchill Fellowship research. So joint speaker, Mark Johnson MBE. Now, I need to find the address here, otherwise what's the point? Here we go.
Yes, well, hang fire with the address, but if people are interested, they can email me.
Which
at
is?
Claire, CLAIRE .Seppings, SEPPINGS, at deakin.edu.au.
And where is it? Geelong Corporate Centre, Deakin University Waterfront Campus,
Yes.
Sally Walker Building, Cunningham Street. When? Wednesday the 27th of June.
At 2 o'clock.
And it goes until 4.
But I must stress for people to email me so that we can keep in touch with him in case we need to move location.
Absolutely. And Mark, I hope you haven't felt put upon. It's just really important that we talked about this in detail, because it's something that's very new to Australia.
Yeah, no, it's not. You couldn't put on me. I mean, as I said, my life's mission is to offer help wherever I can, really, to be honest, and that's a global issue. And as I said, at 18 years I've travelled the world, and we've all got the same issue, and that's kind of lack of understanding.
It is a real lack of understanding.
Yeah.
And I suppose, I've been a little bit jokey now and then, a bit sarcastic as well, but really because sometimes we do need to use black humour just to survive.
Absolutely.
But I think, Mark, one of the things that I really want to stress to listeners is that it's important to have lived experience, whether that's the lived experience of prisoners, whether that's the lived experience of Aboriginal people.
Yeah.
It's important to consult people with lived experience, isn't it?
Yeah. And
one of the things that I think we do need to make a little bit clearer here is we've established that in user voice people help themselves, okay, that it's not about power. And you've actually looked at that very, very, very clearly. But there is one thing that I don't understand that I need you to help me with, Mark, and that is you say that the governor pays the prisoners, and I want to make sure that when we put out our podcast that people know what the program is. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, when you say negotiation, can you just give us a little bit of a real life example, just so that listeners can understand what you mean? What do you mean? What's an example of negotiation?
You say the governor pays the prisoners. He doesn't. He pays user voice.
Yeah, he pays the prisoners. Yeah,
pays
user voice.
Yeah.
Okay. So when they go into the prisons, what would be like an example?
So we've based it on democracy, that dirty word, democracy.
Yeah.
It doesn't work, but it's the best thing that we've kind of got. Do you know what I mean? If we weren't there, and what we predominantly do is monitor between power and non-power.
Okay.
And we've written it up in such a way. We've done a lot of work on this, by the way.
Sure.
and we've written it up in such a way that we can kind of bring everybody to this kind of point of, well, it's actually elusive, but we always try to attain it, and that's balance through power. We've had, sort of experienced prisoners. I mean, looking at we've had prisoners revolt against the system, or the model hasn't been observed, and it turns into a communist state with a group of prisoners wanting to run the whole prison. But actually, when we point out that they're only representative of themselves, which is really dangerous, we can kind of get that back on track often with the governor. Yeah. And,
I see.
And by saying, who are you representative of? Our training is all about teaching people representative skills to go and represent people that are more vulnerable, or to make sure that when there's a council meeting, and that's an ensemble of people, that it's issue based. So it can be and then to the governor we educate them to say, when you're looking at a group of people, you have to make sure that each of the sort of community is represented fully. So whether that's drug addicts, whether that's vulnerable prisoners, whether that's people that have never even seen the governor because they're so active that they won't engage in anything, that we make sure that we get a real good sweep of the whole community. So in actually outside in the community, we have women for women, young people, drugs, mental health, rehabilitation, jobs. It's all represented within the council, and they have a voting procedure where it sort of goes round, and there's often a pre-meeting before the governor, because that's the colourful bit. Yeah, so that that doesn't the infighting and stuff.
So representing people on issues that are important to them.
Yeah, but what it is, it's an intervention.
Yes.
Because it's kind of nuanced. You have to look at it very carefully, because when you look at this group of people, it's their first introduction to solving problems non-violently or without dominating other people that are kind of vulnerable. So it's a real introduction into saying, actually, I can solve my problems without, dominating you or putting you, stabbing you, etc. So you do see real sort of transformation, I think, with people. And we offer, when you said that question before, what are you going to do for me? And the first message is, we're not going to do anything, you're going to do it. And one of our guarantees are, your life is going to be different in 3 months' time by doing this, getting involved in this stuff.
Yep. Great.
And it's kind of a guarantee that's kind of a mature guarantee now, that we know we've done this for 10 years now, and we know that once people immerse themselves with their peers in a non-power holding way, but use their negotiation skills, and actually a lot of transferable skills, let's face it. So how you get from, you used to sell drugs, well, if you sold drugs, then you know how to run a line of supply chain. Well, finding people and representing people is kind of a similar method to that. So you can use a lot of the skill set in your criminal sort of behaviour in your new one.
Okay. Yeah. I've spoken about that before too, and I think I might have mentioned before as well here, Marisa, about looking at a prison as a community. Our prisons are very undemocratic. So one thing that I brought back from when I was in the UK was people talking about active citizenship. Yeah. And viewing the prison as a community, and so that's what you're doing. You're giving people a sense of, I can learn how to then address issues in other ways. But when you think, if people live in prison in a very undemocratic environment, but then they're coming back out into mainstream community, how do you navigate that unless you've been trying to just like a continuum? Just if you're seen to be, or given all the ability to be able to vote and be a part of whatever you kind of do in the community, but you lose that for a period of time in prison. How do you get that back again? By keeping the prison as a community too.
And as a community, you could go to the governor, couldn't you, and negotiate with the governor about improving things in the prison?
That's exactly what they do. And
Okay.
I mean, we always start with a place of going, look, there's always these big things that need to change.
So that can happen. That's a part of it.
But we teach about negotiation skills and say, like, let's gather up all of the little bits.
Yeah.
All of the little tiny changes which are going to be really going to give you credibility with the governor and senior members of staff. So it can be things like deep cleaning of visit halls. It can be, making sure that people clean the showers, or, like really small changes which gives the council validation in front of the governor. And then, absolutely, and then start chipping away at the really big things.
I get you. Yeah, look, it's Mark, the reason why I asked you that question before, I knew quite well, really, that it was about negotiation, but I asked you that question to get you going, really, because, do you know what I mean, to make sure that we answered that question, because often we are conditioned to have people do things for us. Yep. We are conditioned into the police defending us against rape and crime when we could be defending ourselves. And that's what user voice is, isn't it? It's about defending yourself, not just not so physically, but also emotionally as well.
Yeah.
It's approximately 4:54. We've only got about 3 minutes, and I wanted to thank you, Mark, for coming in, and thank you, Claire, as well, for helping me to prepare this material.
Pleasure.
And thank you, Daniel, as well, for accompanying Mark. But just a few housekeeping things for the show. We had our radiothon last week, and we've had heaps and heaps of pledges, and we've met our target. But we are needing people to pay your pledges when you can, and if you pay before the 30th of June, you will get a tax receipt, and that's really important. So there are various ways to pay, and call 94198377 if you want to do that, and get that if you can. And Claire, could you just give out your email address again in case people want to go to Geelong?
Yes, sure. Claire, CLAIRE .Seppings, SEPPINGS @deakin.edu.au.
Yeah, and also just a correction on air last week, or an addition. Margaret and Peter donated $50 for the show, and they wanted to do that also in memory of Mouse, who was a former contributor on the Doing Time show. So, Mark, thank you so much, and I wanted to welcome you to Australia and really wish you the very, very best for the events that you're doing, and I wanted to thank you for coming to the Doing Time show. We're in some ways quite confrontational with our media, and we like to not so much concentrate on the addictions and what people have done, because that's quite enough. They sensationalise that enough in mainstream media. We like to actually concentrate on the programs.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks so much. So we're going to be going out pretty soon with our theme song, Black Fella, White Fella, from the Rumpy Band. And tune in every Monday for the Doing Time show, every Monday from 4 to 5 p.m. A cheerio to Peter, who couldn't make it today. Thanks to Rob as well for helping out with the show and with the producing. And see you next Monday. We've got Beyond Zero up next. Thanks a lot. Stay safe and take care of each other.